be a detrimental one sometimes if there's false information or unnecessary information that is being sent out there. So we're monitoring all of those feeds as well. We're trying to confirm what exactly is what is fact, what is not. But again, the most important thing that you should know right now is where we are in this timeline, and that is that the methodical search of that building still taking place, and there have been now plans officially made to reunite parents with their students, and it is not at the school, folks. It is over at the Center of Performing Arts on West Debbie, which is about a couple miles away from the school, not too far from there. And again, here it is, parent reunification point over at the Center for Performing Arts. The address there on your screen, 1110 West Debbie, and Madison pulled up a map just a little bit ago, and when you just said it was about 5 miles?
It's less than 5 miles. Basically, if you go straight east on Debbie Lane towards 287 instead of 360, you'll basically run into it. So if you're familiar with the Sam's Club in the area, the Performing Arts Center is right by that Sam's Club that's on Highway 287. Again, one of the reasons that our chopper was moved away from the scene is likely due to the fact, Ken, that a police helicopter is likely overhead of that high school. Just keeping an extra eye on the scene, making sure that no vehicles are speeding away from the scene, that sort of thing. So they are trying to make sure this whole area is on lockdown, not only on the ground, but also from the skies.
Something interesting to sort of make a point of here, Madison, because you brought this up. A lot of parents may not know, a lot of these schools have these cell phone blocks, right, where they can essentially disable phones. But that has been lifted, is what we're hearing here at the school. And parents who are waiting to hear from their students, from their kids, are finally starting to get a lot of these messages. We heard from one parent on the phone who said exactly that, and he was able to sort of get an idea of where his kids, he's got 2 freshmen, where his kids are inside that building. So this would be the time, right, when these students are making their first communications probably with their parents who are either at home, at work, or, somewhere near the school, which, again, you're being asked not to do.
Yeah, so if you are getting word from your student, from your child, that they are safe, please do not go to Timberview High School. Instead, go to that reunification center that's been set up at the Performing Arts Center. That's right off of 287, close to the Sam's Club. Again, that's right off of Debbie Lane, very close to the highway. So if you're familiar with that area, just head east and you'll be able to get there. But Ken, this is playing out for about an hour now. We've not seen emergency responders' presence increase. I would say it's been pretty stagnant as far as the number of emergency responders there. We've also not seen large numbers of police enter the building yet, which likely indicates that the small group of SWAT officers that may be inside are doing that detailed combing search of the building to make sure that A, the active shooter is not still in the building, but B, treating any victims, making sure that anybody that might have been harmed is able to get out and get the medical attention that they need.
The ATF out of Dallas has just confirmed that they are now on the scene. Of course, Arlington Police seems to be the lead on the dissemination of information, that who has sort of been the point on all the details coming out. But the ATF has confirmed that they are also on the scene. We do know, we've heard this now 3 different times, 3 different sort of sources there, parents, reporters, folks who we're talking to here, that this, Madison, might have started as some kind of altercation between maybe students, and then at some point a firearm was produced. Shots were fired and people were hit.
Yeah, and we are continually closely monitoring our feeds as well as social media to try to bring you any latest information that we can confirm. And the latest information that we've just received is a statement from the Texas Attorney General, that would be Ken Paxton, who says, quote, "I am closely following the shooting incident that took place this morning in Arlington, Texas. Our thoughts and prayers are with the community." So we will likely see in the next hours and obviously the next few days, more statements coming in from local leaders.
You know what, guys, if we could, I know he's probably running around right now, but Jason Allen, we do have reporter Jason Allen on this scene. If we can maybe go to him at some point. I know right now he's not ready, but if we could here in a short time, it'd be great to sort of visit with him briefly and see, kind of get the lay of the land down there, because he's about as close as you can get to the school. We saw from his live shot earlier, and he had some pretty good information there from the ground. We have several photographers on the scene as well. So we've got you covered here as far as information is in regards. NICOLE Jacobs is on the phone right now, and I think she's chatting with some parents there. NICOLE, let's go ahead and bring her in. NICOLE, if you can hear us okay,
yes,
NICOLE?
Yes, I can hear you, Ken. Right now, we are trying to make our way to the softball field of the school. Authorities were trying to direct us there as we were coming into the area. As you can imagine, and I'm sure as you've seen, the area is really blocked off quite a bit. But I do have a parent that I'm walking with right now. Her name is Seth, and she has a 9th grade student at the school right now. Seth, tell me the conversation that you had with your son.
He just basically said that they were barricaded in their, he said the doors are locked. It's on lockdown because somebody fired shots. The police are here and looking to find the shooter. They still hadn't found him. We're safe in the classroom. The doors are locked and the lights are off. I haven't spoke to him, I guess, he stopped answering the phone maybe about 20 minutes ago. And a couple of my teacher friends told me a teacher passed. And one of the kids, 3 kids were shot, but it's not completely confirmed because she's a teacher. I don't know if she's supposed to be telling us that or not.
And tell me just the thoughts and feelings that you're having right now. I know you're very panicked because you can't reach your son, but please know that we believe he's safe, okay? So we're just going to be prayerful in that regard. Tell me what else you have learned. You said you spoke with your husband earlier.
Yeah.
And what did he tell you?
He basically called and she said, hey, there's a active shooter at Timberview. And my son is in the ECHS program at Timberview. He's in the early college high school. So they're in a wing of Timberview. And so I just hung up and got on my phone to try to call my son, and that's when I saw the text message from him. And when I called him back, he said, we're in the classroom. I heard the kids were screaming. They were crying in the classroom.
Okay, Seth has a call that she has to take now, but as you can imagine, parents are incredibly panicked. I can tell you the area where we were stopped and we had to get out of our car to try to make way to the softball field on foot. I can tell you there are lines and lines of cars with parents on their phones just eager to speak with someone who could give them some information. And Seth is one of those parents. So, Ken, that is kind of the situation we are dealing with right now. We are still working to get over to that softball field so that we can get more information as well.
Okay, Nicole, we'll thank you very much for calling in. We'll let you do what you need to do to gather some more information, and we're going to check in with you in a little bit. Thank you very much. And Madison, you can hear in the voice of that parent sort of the distress and really the panic.
Yeah, and again, our reiteration of the information that we are hearing from authorities, which is if you are a parent, do not go to the high school. The high school is not going to be where you're going to get the most updated information. Instead, go to that reunification center on Debbie Lane at the Performing Arts Center. That is the Mansfield ISD Performing Arts Center. We also know the 2 agencies taking the lead on this as far as giving out information will be Arlington Police, so you can follow them on Twitter, as well as Mansfield ISD. So those are going to be the 2 biggest sources for any information related to when the lockdown may be lifted or where students will be sent once they're at the Performing Arts Center to be able to be reunited.
Again, so much information that is circulating right now. That is who we are also taking our cue from and relaying the details from to you. So those are the folks that you need to be listening to right now. We know that they were trying to clear, the police officers were trying to clear some of the backup traffic that was starting to form near the school. And again, as Madison said, the reunification center is over on West Debbie. It's only a few miles away from the school. 10:54 right now, and we know that the first call came in at about 9:36, and you know, this is still the scene. There is no resolution here. We just see a lot of police officers there on the scene, as well as EMS personnel. We spoke with a parent earlier there on the ground, one of the folks that gathered there at the school. Let's go ahead and have a listen to what they had to say.
Police are running up and down the hallway, and they're saying, they're calling out that they're the police.
Yeah, the best thing we can do for our kids right now is pray. That's the best thing we can do. We can pray for them.
Ken, it's hard to hear because you can Anyone that is watching this broadcast can relate to exactly what those parents are feeling and can empathize with those parents, because no one wants this scene playing out at their student's high school. One thing we want to point out from Chopper 11, it does look like a line of school buses are starting to arrive. That would signal that maybe they are preparing for the exit of students to start going towards the reunification center. A live look from on the ground as well, and you can see more buses starting to line up. So again, this is all happening on 360. In fact, you can see from miles back, it looks like there are bus after bus after bus. There are a lot of them.
So that, again, as Madison just said, we know timeline-wise, process-wise, you know, what happens here in order. We know that the methodical search was the first thing. Perhaps this is, in fact, an indicator or a signal that that is starting to wrap up, and they are moving on to the next step, which is to begin to evacuate that school. We know that 2,000 students, or about 2,000 students, are enrolled there at Timberview High School. Not sure how many actually were in attendance today, but the school buses are beginning to show up now, because the next step, and I'm going to guess some point soon here, Madison, is going to be to start evacuating the school, start loading those buses with the students, and then taking them over to that reunification center that we've been mentioning over at the Center of Performing Arts on West Debbie, just a couple miles away from the school. This is obviously a crime scene, and there's going to be a lot of work that needs to happen once those students get out of there. But again, as you pointed out, the long line of school buses starting to show up there, and hopefully getting those kids out of there.
Yeah, and Ken, I just learned from TxDOT. TxDOT just tweeted as well, saying that they have shut down the southbound service road of 360 to likely allow for all of those buses to line up so that they can have some systematic order of getting those students from the building into those buses and to the reunification center. Another likely part of what's going to happen next, Ken, is any students that may have witnessed what happened. They may be held by police, questioned, to get an idea of what exactly played out in the moments around 9:30 this morning when that active shooting took place. So that's going to be, if your student is delayed, it may be because they were in the part of the school where this happened. If they are not one of the first people on the bus, do not panic. Again, they may just be in the school working with law enforcement to give them a better idea of what exactly happened this morning.
You know, for concerned parents who are trying to reach their students, who are trying to get information, who are showing up there to the school, I guess we could just gather here from all the information that we've been sharing and sort of the edict and the information that we're getting from police departments and officials there on the scene, is that everyone who needs to be there is there, right? So if that provides any comfort, there are every police officer that needs to be there is there. As we can see, the school buses are starting to arrive for the evacuation that will take place and the transfer of students from the school over to the reunification center. So that will happen sometime in short order, we believe. And again, this is a process that I guess, unfortunately, because of the realities that we live in this day and age, this is a process that has been thought about previously. It is being put into place right now, and everything right now is going the way that it is expected to go.
But again, the biggest piece of information that we can give you is the fact that parents, if you are concerned, if you have the urgency to get to Timberview High School, you are urged not to go there, but instead to go to the Performing Arts Center. That is where the reunification will take place. That is where likely all of these school buses will be dropping off students that are inside of those classrooms. Again, the Mansfield ISD Performing Arts Center. If you can look at the map to give you an idea of where that is going to be off of 287. The high school is right there where you see denoted on your screen, but the Mansfield Performing Arts Center is just to the southeast of there on 287, close to a Sam's Club. If you're familiar with the Sam's Club, the Mansfield Performing Arts Center is right near there.
That's the spot. We're getting more video and sort of sound from parents there on the scene and comments from what they had to say. Let's go ahead and have a listen to another piece of video that just came into the newsroom.
They heard shots in the class, in the hallway. And then the police came and checked on them. And they said they would be escorting them out soon, but no one knows really much more, right? No, they don't.
So again, that parent expressing the concern, it is obvious, it is clear, it is very raw. We understand that there are many parents who feel the same way right now. And so our job right now is to try and get you all the information that you need so that you can figure this out here.
This is breaking news from CBSN Dallas-Fort Worth.
Again, we continue to follow that breaking news out of Arlington, where Mansfield ISD High School, Mansfield Timberview High School in Mansfield ISD has been the site of an active shooter situation this morning.
Oh, it all started at about 9:36. We have Chopper 11 there over the scene. I want to go ahead and give you some images right now that we're seeing from here in the studio. But again, we did confirm that there was some sort of an active shooter situation that took place there. The school was placed on lockdown, and we did see throughout the morning, throughout the last hour and a half or so, several groups of police officers making entry. Now, as to where we are at this point, we have not received any confirmation that the situation is over or that it has been cleared. What we are seeing are a line of school buses that are showing up to the school here because we do understand that at some point when the all clear is given and when the evacuations begin, those students are going to be taken out of the school. They're going to be loaded onto those school buses, and they're going to be taken over to a reunification center.
And Ken, we were just told that the all clear has been given.
Okay,
that means there is no longer an active threat to the high school, which is good news for any parents listening right now. Again, we just received the all clear message that there is no active threat to the students or staff that are still in the building at Timberview High School.
We are still waiting to hear more details about exactly what happened in there with this shooting that took place in there. But we do want to let you know that our photographer, Vince Bosquez, right now is live outside the home of who police believe may have been a possible shooter here. Vince, can you hear us okay?
Yes, sir, Ken. How are you? Right now, 8,000 block of South Collins, which is just north of Raglan Road, I believe. I just arrived to what they believe is a suspect's house. They've got surrounded. You have a lot of Arlington PD out here, a lot of residents taking pictures, of course. Earlier, I was at the school, the 360 site, and, of course, very emotional time. I think you just listened to some of the sound of some of the parents, they were just in tears, getting phone calls, getting texts, getting, pictures. One father was getting pictures, and his son was inside the school taking pictures of his dad, saying, "Dad, I'm okay." And he could see his pickup truck. So there's a lot of emotion out there, to say the least. But right now, like I said, I am in front of what they believe is a suspect house on the 8,000 block of South Collins. I will keep the shot up. We'll see what else is happening, and I guess we'll break in as we see fit.
Yeah, and again, we do not know if the suspect was caught at the school. We don't know if they were caught at the house. We don't even know if they've been caught. We have not confirmed whether the suspect is in custody yet, but as soon as we learn that information, we will bring it to you. Again, you're seeing that live video from Chopper 11 of the school buses lining the southbound service road and even northbound service road.
They're wrapped around.
Yeah, and we've heard that the attendance at this school, the current student population is 2,000. So you can imagine how many school buses it will take to get an estimated 2,000 students from the high school to the reunification center. But obviously a process that will take some time. So parents, the good news is we have just received the all clear from the school, which means that there is no longer an active threat to that high school, which means that if you are able to get in contact with your student, likelihood is they are safe, they are fine, and they will now be doing the tedious, arduous process of getting those students on the bus to that reunification center.
Anecdotally, we have been speaking to parents that have been in contact with their kids inside the school, and they're telling stories of some kind of altercation. Not exactly sure what kind or what led up to it, but at some point there was some sort of a fight or an altercation inside the school. A gun came out at some point, and that's when the shots were fired. All of them telling stories of at least a couple of people who were hit by gunfire. We don't know how many, we don't know who they are or what their conditions are, but we do know that according to these stories that the students are telling their parents, there are at the very least here at least a couple of injuries related to this.
And we do know that the parents were notified at around 9:36 this morning. The first official call went out to police regarding an active shooter situation at 9:30. So now we're going on about an hour and a half that they have been able to at least investigate the scene long enough to give an all clear, which is honestly, Ken, what every parent was hoping to hear at some point.
And quite honestly, it happened. If you think about it, an hour and a half into this, that's relatively quickly. Maybe not quick enough for the parents, and we understand that. But when you think of sort of the totality of what is being investigated here and what the initial calls were earlier for this active shooter, an hour and a half into it, we now have the all clear to share with you. The all clear that was given by authorities who, of course, are tasked with making sure that everything is safe. We do see that police are still on the scene there at the school. Police are on the scene as well at a home in the area that we believe is the home of where maybe the suspected shooter was living in. But again, we are hoping to see at some point that the kids will start to be evacuated out of the school, loaded onto those buses and taken over to the reunification.
Yeah, Nicole Jacobs has been on scene for about the last 15 minutes. Nicole, we know you were moved to the softball fields or nearby to the softball fields. It looks like now you're close to the 360 Service Road, but you're with a concerned parent, and the message to them right now is the fact that there has been an all clear given.
We never made it to the softball field, but I can tell you where we are right now. You can see the backup of people just really concerned. These school buses, we're told, are going to transport students to the Performing Arts Center, and that is where parents can reunite with their students. I do want to bring in now Calvin Basir, Calvin's daughter, correct? I'm sorry, your son is a sophomore, and you made contact with him. Tell me what that contact was.
It was a text in our family group. So he sent a text that there was a shooting and they have a lockdown in school. And that was a work.
And that was at what time?
Maybe 30 minutes ago, 1 hour ago.
Okay. And you actually spoke with him as well shortly after that text message. What was that conversation like?
He was in a panic state and he told me they were having a lockdown. He had some gunshots and they were in their rooms now.
Could you hear the panic in the rooms with all the students there and the teachers there? Was there chaos in the background?
There a little bit of some yelling, directions being given, but the boy was kind of scared. He texted the family, and I had to leave work to come up here.
So your son, what's your son's name?
Simon.
Simon. So tell me what you feel that that Simon is experiencing and feeling right now in this state of lockdown at the school.
He's in some fear based on the history of the shooting in schools, but so far we have not been told of any fatality or anything like that. So, and we talked to him and we think he should be okay.
And how are you feeling as a parent?
Panicked right now because they said they've not got the person yet. Yeah.
And so at this point, you will reunite with Simon at the Performing Arts Center. Are you waiting to do that?
Yes, I'm going to leave and go over there because all of them are going to the same place.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Calvin, for that. We really appreciate it. Again, you can see this long line of buses all geared up to transport those students to the Performing Arts Center. I can tell you we spoke with a woman a short time ago. Her son is a 9th grader, and she said her son was very, very calm. Her son was very straightforward, and he said we are safe in the classroom. And that was certainly good news for her at the time. But since then, she has not been able to speak with her son. So, of course, there is fear, there is anxiety, and there is panic with regards to that. Along this highway here, when we came into the area, there were cars lining the streets and parents walking the streets with their phones, trying to get as much information as they could from people who could help them. Many of them said they just couldn't get the answers they were looking for. But most of the people I spoke with today said they did make contact with their child, and for that, they are very grateful. Back into you.
Yeah, understandably so. Nicole, thank you so much for that report. Ken, we should mention the fact that Mansfield ISD was able to get these buses in line in such a short amount of time kind of shows that they train for these situations. As unfortunate and as no one wants these situations to occur, they are obviously prepared and ready in the event that a situation like this would happen on one of their campuses.
I was having the same thought because we heard from Arlington Police earlier on sort of the next steps, right? You know, how all of this was going to play out. They talked about completing their methodical search. They talked about setting up a parent pickup point over at the Performing Arts Center, and that buses were going to come to the school to start, you know, getting the kids out of there and take them over to the reunification center. And then all of a sudden, really within about 20-25 minutes, we started to see that long line of buses show up. And really, it speaks, like you say, to their preparedness. Unfortunately, to the fact that they've had to think about this before. And it also speaks to the ability that they had to sort of mobilize as quickly as they did, because the buses are already out there. They're ready to take the kids. We're just waiting to see these evacuations begin.
Yeah, and again, we have the latest information from confirmed sources, and those confirmed sources include Mansfield ISD as well as Arlington Police, who is handling the investigation. If you're not familiar with Timberview High School, it's actually in City of Arlington, so that is why Arlington Police is taking the lead as far as disseminating any information. But again, Mansfield ISD, Arlington Police, other neighboring law enforcement agencies are currently investigating that active shooter situation at Timberview High School. But the good news is the all clear has been given, and Mansfield ISD is who sent out that all clear, Ken. So you do have to understand that likely parents at this point have also received that notification from the school district.
And all clear, again, doesn't mean that everything resumes back to the way it was before 9:36 this morning. This is still very much a long, drawn-out process that will have to take place here, including the way in which the students will be evacuated, loaded onto those buses, and taken over to reunite with their parents over at the Center of Performing Arts. So all of this, folks, you're going to have a little bit of patience. I know that for parents and for concerned loved ones, that's a lot to ask of right now, but you are going to have to exercise as much patience as you can and let the authorities and the officials do what they need to do so that they can carry out this process as seamlessly as possible. And of course, we have to mention that this is now in fact, a crime scene, right? I mean, there's a lot of documentation that's going to have to happen afterwards. Madison was speaking about this earlier. More than likely, there are students who are witnesses to whatever happened inside there, and they're going to have to be spoken to and sort of give statements. And so, again, you know, it's not going to go back to the way it was, you know, at 9:30 this morning. This is very much a process that needs to play out. And
Ken, we, like the rest of the community right now, are watching this play out, and we too are humans, and we can humanize the situation by saying CBS 11 has an employee that also has a student at this high school and was going through those same steps that every parent that has a student at this high school was going through, trying to make contact with their child. So this is something that even if you don't have a student at Timberview High School, it affects you because you realize this is the world we live in where this is a possibility at a school.
At this day and age, hard to believe that this couldn't or wouldn't affect you in some way or shape or form because, you know, unfortunately, we just hear about these types of incidents way too often. But again, what you're seeing right now is a prepared plan being executed by law enforcement and school officials in Mansfield down there at Timberview High School. Again, at that unification center at the 1110 West Debbie Street. If you're just joining us, that is the location where parents are being asked to go to. You're being asked to stay away from this school at all costs. Really, there's no getting in, even if you tried.
Yeah, I mean, we saw from not only NICOLE's shot right on the service road, it looks like there is a...
This may be the first group. Here we go.
First group of students leaving. This is not the main building of Timberview High School, but it looks like this may be an adjunct building.
Yes.
Possibly a gym. We're not exactly sure what building that is, but it does look like the first group of students is exiting.
Yes.
And they're exiting very calmly.
Yes.
So it looks like police, again, have this situation under control. The students that are leaving this building are safe. They're all accounted for. And now they are working on the process of getting these students on that long line of buses that we've seen pile up along the service road.
You know, we've been talking a lot about perspective and timelines throughout the morning as we've been covering this story here. And I want to, because I just made a note here, it is 11:13 right now. First calls went out at 9:36. So if you're doing the math here, a little less than 2 hours after the initial calls for this is when we're seeing the first group of students now being escorted out of that adjacent building that you talked about, Madison. More than likely, they're going to be directed, and they are receiving a police escort, by the way, so they're safe. And they are being directed to those buses that are on standby on the, I guess, what is that, the south side of the school?
Yeah, that would, it looks like the buses are on the south side. This would be something that is, the building that we're looking at right now, that would be on the northeast northeast side of the school. So this might be a field house. It looks like it's adjacent to some football fields from Google Maps. So due to this being so far away and next to all of the athletic complexes, I would believe that this would be like a field house.
And again, this is going to, this is going to take a little bit of time. So once again, folks, we need to have patience with this. Let law enforcement do what they need to do, and school officials do what they need to do so that they can, in a very orderly fashion, get those students loaded onto the buses and reunited with their parents. We do know that there are some 2,000 students that are enrolled at Timberview High School. We don't know what the head count was this morning as of morning attendance, but that gives you an idea of just how many students could actually potentially be inside, as well as staff and other folks that need to be taken out of there.
Yeah, and it has looked like, even if you took the emergency responders away from the scene, that the parking lot was fairly full of either faculty, staff, or students' vehicles. So we would likely assume that attendance was close to what it normally would be. Now, we do have to take into account that some students may still be distance learning, some students may be learning from home, but we do know that Mansfield ISD was back to in-person classes. So it was likely what would be a normal Wednesday for students at Mansfield Timberview High School.
Well, one can certainly imagine that. You see some of the cars that are parked outside. You see the heavy law enforcement response. You can make that assumption that the school was, was full. And again, it is a large building. So again, everything has to happen step by step. We do have some video of the parking lot area that we want to share with you. This was taken earlier today, and I guess this is the initial moments when fire and EMS were sort of staging out there, waiting to get what their next direction was going to be in all of this.
Yeah, and since we have been on the air, which was around 10:30, 10:15 this morning, we do have to say the entire scene at Mansfield Timberview High School has been relatively stagnant and relatively calm for the most part. Obviously, parents are arriving on scene, longing to make contact with their students. But as far as the police presence and ambulance presence, it's been pretty stagnant, which would point to the fact that any victims of these shootings, anyone that might have been injured, has now already been transported to the hospital.
We're just hearing right now of a connection now to 10 Arlington ISD schools. This is Mansfield ISD. The school is in our city of Arlington, but it is Mansfield ISD. And now we are just hearing that 10 Arlington ISD schools have also been placed on lockdown as a potential search for a suspect, we're being told, takes place at those schools as well. So now we're hearing that this has a much broader implication and impact just beyond Timberview.
Yeah, and those schools are on a lockout. This school is on a lockdown, which means that the students and staff are in the classrooms, and no one from outside the building can get in, and no one from inside the building can get out, whereas those Arlington ISD schools are on lockout, which means that their outside exterior doors are shut, they are locked, no one from the outside can get in.
And my apologies for that. There is a difference between lockdown and lockout. So it is lockout that we're talking about here. But again, we just got that word, and that apparently that decision to do that to those 10 Arlington ISD schools is related to possibly a continued search for a suspect.
And Ken, those school buses right now that we're watching from Chopper 11 are moving towards that northeast side or northwest side of the building, close to that field house that we saw. So likely those students that we saw walk out of that field house. Looks like we're going to a presser right now.
Let's have a listen.
Need me to do a test or anything? We're good, thank you. Ready? All right, gentlemen. Thank you guys for being here. First of all, I want to thank all the agencies that we have that responded to this. We have, of course, Grand Prairie Police Department, Mansfield Police Department, Mansfield Independent School District. We've got all types of federal agencies that are here, ATF, FBI, helping us in this situation. So anytime that you have an incident like this that comes out as an active shooter, particularly in a school, all of law enforcement really comes together and cooperates and makes sure that we have a unified effort to neutralize or to stop any type of threat, particularly in these schools and our children. So now I just want to kind of brief you and give you the facts as we know it. So about 9:15 this morning, we got a call that there was a shooting on the second floor of Timberview High School. Several other phone calls came in at the same time. I can tell you that there were 4 victims. One was minor injuries who refused treatment. 3 individuals were taken to the hospital. Currently, we have multiple agencies doing a methodical search at the school. We're trying to make sure that all our children are safe as they are in lockdown, and we're going to try to do an orderly fashion to bring them out of the school to ensure that they are brought to their parents. Okay? Once the search is completed, we'll make sure that all the students are transported on a bus on the south side of the school to the Mansfield Independent School District Center of Performing Arts at 1110 Debbie Lane. Prior to the students leaving the building in an orderly, controlled fashion, we've got police officers that will take photographs of their identifications so we make sure that we've got all the students accounted for in an orderly fashion. Now, this incident, as tragic as it is, we take very serious in law enforcement. We do have a suspect who's identified, okay? What we believe happened preliminary is that there was a fight between a student and another individual in a class, and a gun was used, and there are 4 victims. I'm here to identify a person of interest right now. Is Timothy George Simpkins. It's S-I-M-P-K-I-N-S. He is a black male, 18 years of age. We have a car that he is currently driving, or we believe is driving, is a 2018 silver Dodge Charger. License plate P as in Paul, F as in Frank, Y as in Yankee, 6260. We currently have multiple agencies, including the U.S. Marshals Task Force, that is looking for this individual. Again, this is a collaborative effort between state, local, and federal agencies to bring this person to justice. So.
I'm Tracy Aaron, the Chief of Police in Mansfield. I want to say thank you to all of the agencies. It's not just helping just this incident, but all of our other sister agencies here close. You know, Mansfield responded to this the same as all of the other agencies, and I have to assure you that the departments are doing a great job here in bringing all this to a close. What you're going to see now is that there's going to be continued searches for our suspect. The Chief has already told us what that looks like. We ask for our citizens' help to continue to search for that person and call in any leads that you may have. You should know at this point that this person is considered to be armed and dangerous, and I would suggest that you call 911 as soon as you see that person or you see that suspect vehicle. We are continually making those searches throughout the state as it turns out. Be having the victims in your thoughts and prayers. Please lift those folks up in your prayers. Some of those are already in surgery, so be thinking about those. Be thinking about our suspect and their family. We need to bring this to a safe resolution, and that's what our goal is. Thank y'all very much for being here, and thank you for your help.
Thank you. Daniel Cesny, Grand Prairie Police Department. I'd like to echo the Chief's comments with our thoughts and prayers to the families. I want you to know that the Grand Prairie Police Department's role today is strictly in a support role. Although we believe the suspect is currently at large, you'll see the Grand Prairie SWAT team and the SWAT teams of our other agencies clearing the school to make sure there's no other additional dangers. The Grand Prairie Police Department is also actively involved in the search for the suspect, partnering with the United States Marshals Service and the Fugitive Task Force, and they are out as we speak looking for the suspect. As mentioned, this is a very large collaborative effort, and our goal is to make sure that all of the students here not just come out safe, but feel safe. So we're working toward that end as we speak. You should see very shortly a large contingent of students coming out orderly, loading onto the buses and moving to the location already indicated. Our recommendation that parents go to that location that Chief Colby mentioned the address rather than coming to the school. Coming to the school here would just make things more difficult. So again, please go to the pickup location. Thank you very much.
willing to take any questions. But again, I just want to reemphasize that this is not a random act of violence. This is not somebody attacking our schools. This is a student. We believe right now, preliminary, that it was a student that got into a fight and drew a weapon.
Chief, real quick, so you talked on those.
I do not. We had 2 Mansfield Independent School District police officers that housed in this school. They were here and they were on scene immediately to render our safety to our students.
Are there metal detectors at the school?
I don't have that information.
When you talk about the victims and being hospitalized, can you confirm, were they hospitalized with gunshot wounds?
I can tell you that yes, that I believe 2 of the victims were received gunshot wounds. To the severity, I don't have that information right now.
And were these teachers, students?
We believe that 3 of the victims were students. 1 was an older person that may be a teacher.
Was anyone pregnant?
Excuse me?
A pregnant person involved in this?
There was a report of a pregnant woman who was one of the 4 victims that may have fell during the shooting, but received medical treatment from our EMS here on scene and was released. That person is not in the hospital based upon the information that I have right now.
There are a lot of people who will be watching this concerned specifically about the kids inside of the building. It would seem to be that you have a certain level of confidence that the danger, should there be any, is not here, correct? I realize there's a lot of logistics involved in searching, but could you speak to your level of confidence that there's no continued threat for the students in these buildings?
Yes, I have a high confidence right now that the shooter is not on the premises. I have a high confidence that it was only 1 shooter at this school. We want to continue to make sure that we lock down our students to make sure that they are safe. We have Grand Prairie Police Department, Mansfield Police Department, Arlington Police Department, and other SWAT teams that are methodically going through each of these rooms and releasing these children to make sure that we're safe. We want to make sure that we get identification from each of these students. We want to make sure that they don't have any weapons on them themselves. So it's just a customary practice that we will do to make sure that everybody's safe before we get them out on the buses.
Chief Colby, you mentioned Mr. Simpkins, 18 years of age. He was in that classroom as a student fighting with someone else with that weapon. Is your understanding at this point?
There was a video that I viewed, and he was in a classroom. To what his student, whether he was a student or not, I don't have that information right now. We are going to release his photograph after this press conference, and we are currently actively looking for him now.
And was he able to escape the school because of the chaotic situation?
I don't have those facts, but I do know that there's video. We're trying to review the video to where he came out. Based upon the preliminary information, he came out on the south side. There was a vehicle that was identified. I will tell you that one of the callers that called in immediately identified him as a suspect in this shooting.
Do you know if anyone was able to render aid to those victims before EMS got on scene?
I do not, but again, I want to stress that we had 2 Mansfield Independent Police officers on scene, and they immediately responded to the threat situation, and I'm sure that they tried to minimize any type of injuries with those individuals.
Could I go back to that phone call a second? Was that a call essentially warning that this was about to happen?
No, sir. It was not a call that was a warning. This was a call after the shooting happened. We got multiple 911 calls, and one caller identified the person of interest.
Other students in the room at the time, or was it like just an empty classroom?
Based on the video that I saw, there were other students in the classroom.
When you say video, are you talking about surveillance video or possibly video captured by other students or teachers?
The video that I saw looked like it was captured on a cell phone by other students.
And did that video, sir, include the shooting in and of itself or the fight in and of itself? Because we've seen at least one of those videos.
The video included the fight. I did not see a video that it captured the shooting.
Sir, I'm sorry, just one more time. Could we get the name of the suspect and the victims right now?
The victims? It's on Twitter now. Victims I don't have. The suspect is on Twitter right now.
Got you.
And we'll release the photograph, the suspect here momentarily.
If there's other video out there from students that shot video, would you want that video in hand? You guys want that video?
Yes, any video that's taken of the incident, we would ask any citizen or any student to make sure that they contact Mansfield Police Department or the Arlington Police Department with any video that they have. I will let you know that the Arlington Police Department will handle the criminal investigation.
And one more question about the suspect. Is he anyone that is known to your agencies?
I don't have that information.
Any more advice for the general public, since you said he's armed and dangerous, for the public at large?
Yeah, I would say if anybody comes across this individual, please do not make contact with him. If they identify the car, make sure that you call 911, have appropriate police response, and let us bring this situation to a conclusion for the safety of the public. And again, our hearts go out to those who are injured today and all the students that went through a traumatic incident at this school.
Do you know what kind of weapon it was?
I do not know what type of weapon it was.
Speaking again directly to the parents and students of the school, we're no doubt watching with great interest about what's happening right now. Could you speak as best you can directly to them? You said not to come to the school. They should come to this off-site location. Could you repeat that information and give some sense that no one could hold you to when they might be able to look their students in the eyes again?
Yeah, we know that this is very traumatic for the parents right now. We know that they're worried about their children and their safety for their children. Right now, we believe that the scene is secure. We're just making sure that we can in an orderly, controlled fashion, make sure that we can identify all the students and make sure that we can account for everyone here. Then what we're going to do, hopefully within the next hour, don't hold me to it, for the next hour, we're going to orderly, controlled fashion, bring them to buses right here on the south side. And then we are going to bus them to the Mansfield Independent School District Center of Performing Arts on Debbie Lane. We ask that all the parents please report there, and your students, your children will get off the buses, and then you can see them there. We have got several of the students that we have interviewed that were witnesses to this incident. So we're going to hold on to those children. Hopefully my detectives will allow them to call their parents. And I'm sure there are many, many of the students that have reached out to their parents and ensured that they are safe. And they are locked in the rooms, and police are going room by room, ensuring that everybody is safe and no one else is a suspect or person of interest in this area.
It's a big school. Any sense of how many students are in there today?
I don't.
Have the family of the victims have already been contacted? That way parents already know that, if they didn't get a call, then their children are fine?
I don't have that information, but I would suspect that, yes, the parents have been contacted and been asked to report to see their loved one, to be with them at the hospital, yes.
Chief Aaron, are you aware of metal detectors at the school by chance?
No, sir, I'm not aware. It's Mansfield Independent School District is in charge of the school district itself, and so I'm not certain of their safety measures inside the school building.
I didn't know if throughout the day-to-day of going in and out if you've been able to see if there's metal detectors.
I have not noticed myself inside this building.
Did you want to get up into the federal?
Hi, Jeff Boschek with ATF. I'm the special agent in charge here for ATF for the Dallas Field Division. We're obviously here today to support our state and local partners in this tragic incident. As a law enforcement officer and then as a parent, with a student in Arlington ISD, this is kind of your scariest moment, right? When this happens, not only with what you do for your job, but when you have a wife who's a teacher here and several kids that go to school in the district. So we're here as soon as we get the information on this firearm. We're going to track it down. We'll figure out where this individual got this gun from. Our agents won't sleep, working with our partners here to figure out how he got this weapon in his hand to come in the school and cause this tragedy today. So I don't have much information I can give you on the weapon. Obviously, we don't have that yet. We haven't been in the school to figure out caliber of the weapon or anything like that yet. But as soon as we do, we'll have something to get out to you guys. So thank you, and to all the victims' families, you're in our thoughts and prayers. So thank you.
All right, guys, we got time for a few more questions before they got to get back and continue working here.
Well, do you have a sense of how many shots were fired and how long the whole incident lasted?
I don't. Just based on the information, I know there were more than 2 or 3 shots that were fired.
Chief, you guys have a home surrounded, or you've got some people, U.S. Marshals outside a house just about a few blocks from here. Is that the shooter's home? Or what does that have to do with this case?
I do not personally have the suspect or person of interest address, so I can't comment on that particular address.
All right.
Anything else?
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, we are just wrapping up here the news conference that just took place. This is the first official word we have heard of some of the details that took place there at the school. We do know now that there were 4 victims, one of them minor injuries, 3 of them with more serious injuries, 2 of those which we believe, at least 2 of those 3 that were received gunshots.
Yeah, but the latest information that we just heard from that press conference is the fact that they are currently searching for a suspect. That suspect is considered armed and dangerous, and we have a photo that Arlington police has released of that suspect. He is Timothy George Simpkins. He was a student at that high school. You see the photo there. He is considered armed and dangerous, but police say to be on the lookout for him as well as his silver Dodge Charger, 2018 silver Dodge Charger with license plate PFY 6260. Again, that is the shooting suspect that was involved in the Timberview Mansfield ISD high school shooting this morning, and that is the person they are searching for right now.
So police are asking, if you come across that suspect, if you come across Timothy Simpkins, to call 911 immediately. Do not try and approach him because, again, he is considered armed and dangerous. Police also said that this was not a random act of violence. This was a result of a fight that took place inside of a classroom, and at some point a gun was pulled and those shots were fired. Let's get live now to Steve Pickett. He is standing by for us now. He was in that news conference just a couple of minutes ago with law enforcement officials, and let's go ahead and get the latest from Steve. Steve, go ahead.
We are told, as you heard here in this briefing, that every student here, minus the witnesses of this shooting, are going to be transported from this school to that Performing Arts Center on Debbie Lane to reassure parents and families, and as you heard, to make sure that they can reconnect with those students from this location to the Performing Arts Center. But from this incident from this morning, authorities now confirming, yes, they believe this 18-year-old, a student inside this school, in a fight, and somehow, some way, brandished a gun, used that gun. 4 people shot, 3 of them students, we are told, as you heard earlier in this briefing. All 3 of the students hospitalized from those gunshot wounds, and they are looking for that 18-year-old. I can tell you that, as you heard with all of this, that is the focal point now, not only just to transfer these students away from here safely. They believe this school, this campus is secure, in their words. So now the focus is on finding the individual they call a person of interest, who they believe on that video was in a fight in a classroom, and from that resulted that gunfire. I can tell you here, obviously, so many parents who were coming here, obviously concerned about all of this. We don't see much of that presence anymore from our vantage point. So many of those folks are essentially headed now to that Performing Arts Center, because these buses will be aligned here within the hour, we are told, to make sure that every student from this building will be transferred to that location, while authorities, local, federal, and what have you, will go back in and reassess exactly what happened here. There were questions asked, as you know, Ken, about how anyone could access a gun inside this school. There are no metal detectors at the front doors. This is a large complex, high school complex, and the video that we have seen and others have seen at this point is some kind of fight in a classroom. Subsequent to or post that fight, a gun was brandished, it was used. 4 people in total were shot, 3 of them students in the hospital as we speak. Ken?
Steve, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you something, because we saw just before the news conference began, we saw what we believe to be the first group of students being evacuated from what looked like a field house. Are you getting any indication that more students have been evacuated yet, or is it still pretty much the same?
I can tell you that they are, as we've been told, essentially aligning those students to come from what is defined as the south side of this campus where we're standing now. So wherever they were, whether they were in the auditorium, where they were in a gymnasium or in classrooms, they want to get a head count. And to get that head count and to make sure there are no other victims in this school, they are now lining them up. We are told essentially by class, by grade, in alphabetical order, placing them on these buses. You just saw one pull up behind me, and then transferring those students to that performing arts location so they can reconnect with their families, and to also, for these authorities, make an accounting to ensure they have everyone they believe is safe and fine inside that school. Ken?
And Steve, this is Madison. We know it's going to be a meticulous process because police even said they're going to be photographing each student's ID as they're exiting the building to make sure that everyone's accounted for. It really seems like they had a plan in place ready to go when this unfortunate tragedy happened today.
I certainly, I can tell you this, Madison, the question wasn't asked, but based on the information that you and I both heard, in terms of emergencies like this seems to be the standard protocol, and that's why this process is taking this certain course, to get these buses in, to account for each and every student, and then get them on those buses and move them from this location. Because authorities want to get inside that classroom, inside that building, whether it be the ATF, the FBI, the local police departments being Mansfield, Arlington also, and also the school district police department also involved in all of this. We were told, as you heard, 2 officers from this school district were here on this campus. They are assigned to this campus, and they were the first responders to that gunfire inside. Madison, Ken?
They got there immediately is what they said. All right, Steve Pickett, thank you very much for all of that information. We'll let you get back to it as we take another live look right now, or a look rather, of the buses that have now assembled to get some of these kids out of there. Madison, we know this started in the 2nd floor.
Yeah, so that was one of the details that we heard from the police officers on scene during that press conference that I think needs to be reiterated, because so many of the parents, the concerned, very concerned parents that we've heard from, have said, we do not know what part of the building this occurred in. We now know the shooting happened in a classroom. It was the result of a fight between 2 students, and then it also happened on the 2nd floor. So now we have been able to isolate it to the 2nd floor, a 2nd floor classroom at Mansfield Timberview High School. We also know that police said, quote, they have a high confidence that the person of interest was the shooter. And that person of interest, we again have the photo. It was Timothy George Simpkins, an 18-year-old student at Timberview High School. Black, 18 years old, driving a 2018 silver Dodge Charger with license plate PFY G260, and they are combing the area trying to find him right now. So if you see him or the vehicle, the silver Dodge Charger with that license plate, you are asked to call 911 because police say he should be considered armed and dangerous.
And we can't sort of emphasize that enough. We know that there are 10 other schools that were put in a lockout status in a nearby school district, Arlington ISD. Obviously, Timberview is in Arlington, although they fall under Mansfield ISD, but nearby Arlington ISD also placing 10 of their schools in a lockout status in connection to this, as police continue to look for this 18-year-old. We also saw a police presence outside of a residence that we believe is his home in Arlington as well. We do have a crew there standing by there too. But again, all of this happening after some kind of a fight that broke out inside of that classroom. There's another look right now of that police presence we were just talking about outside of the home where it is believed that that suspect lives.
Yeah, and again, we want to emphasize this is the person of interest. This is the suspect that they are now trying to locate. There's also been a little bit of confusion regarding how many injuries were a result of this active shooter situation. I do want to point out, Mansfield ISD did send out an update a few moments ago that said that there was 1 injured student and 1 injured staff member, but we've also heard from the press conference that in total there were 4 injured, and the police on scene at the press conference said that there was 1 of those 4 people with minor injuries who did not decide to go to the hospital for those injuries. There was also 3 of those 4 taken to the hospital. He described 2 of those with gunshot wounds, and he described them as needing surgeries. That is the extent of what we know.
The ATF is involved in this. That is important to point out. We heard from Jeff Boshek, who is the chief agent in charge here for our area, talking about him also having kids who attend school in that same district. And he also talked about, you know, being able to figure out where this person got the gun from. He says they're not that far along in the investigation. Obviously, that methodical search that you're going to keep hearing about is still taking place. And this is something that is happening right now as we speak, just before these students are getting ready to be evacuated and taken to the reunification center. But he did say they're going to trace that gun down. They're going to figure out how that gun ended up in that young man's hands.
And right now we're taking a live look from Chopper 11 at the first 4 school buses that have moved from Timberview High School heading towards that Mansfield ISD Performing Arts Center. Again, if you're just joining us, any parents are to go to the Mansfield Performing Arts Center, which is located on Debbie Lane, to get reunited with your students. That is where all students and staff at Mansfield Timberview High School will be going in order to be debriefed and then sent home with their parents. But that is what we're seeing right now play out on Chopper 11.
And the all clear was given earlier today, less than an hour ago. All clear at the school, that is, because again, that's the person of interest, the person that they're looking for related to this shooting. That person is still on the loose. And we do understand that that there is a multi-law enforcement agency effort taking place right now to try and find him and find him quickly. So if we can get that picture up there one more time, let's go ahead and show you who police officers are looking for right now, who they're calling a person of interest right now. This is 18-year-old Timothy George Simpkins. And again, he is driving a 2018 Dodge silver-colored Charger. And the license plate, the tag number on that is P as in Peter, F as in Frank, Y as in Yankee, 6260. He couldn't have gotten too far, we don't think. I mean, he's in the area.
And they obviously think he may have left the school in that Dodge Charger, which is why they're also putting a bolo out on that vehicle as well. But again, you're seeing the school buses start to move and do the meticulous process of moving all of these students from Mansfield Timberview to the Performing Arts Center. If you take a look at the map, if you're unfamiliar with this area, it's not very far away. It's very close to where Mansfield Timberview High School is. It's just to the southeast. So that first alert signal is where Mansfield Timberview High School is. Just to the southeast of there, off of 287, close to Debbie Lane, is where the reunification center has been set up at the Performing Arts Center. If you're not familiar with it, it's right behind the Sam's Club. So if you find the Sam's Club, you can find the Performing Arts Center.
And again, we know 2,000 students enrolled there at the school, so a good bit of them probably there today, this morning, that are going to have to be taken out of the school and taken over to that reunification center. We saw really just an overwhelming amount of school buses show up, and they showed up relatively quickly to get this process underway, because as you said, Madison, this is going to be a very meticulous process to get all of those students safely out of the school and over to the reunification center. We even heard authorities talking about photographing each student's individual ID card, sort of as a way to sort of keep an accountability process as to who's getting on the buses, who's getting out of the school, and who they're dealing with.
Yeah, so at this point, if you are trying to get in contact with your student, we do want to let you know that all cell phone blockers within that school have now been taken down. So we learned that about an hour ago. So the cell phone signal blockers have been taken down. So if you are trying to reach your student to make sure that they are okay, to check in with them, you should be able to do so at this time. But again, Mansfield ISD as well as Arlington Police continue to be the first sources of information and taking the lead on getting any of that information out to parents in the community.
The first group of students to be evacuated, and we believe it's the students that are on these buses right now, because this is, again, the very first group taken over to the reunification center. There were students that seemed to be inside of a field house, so not the main building, just to the northeast of it, across from a football field. But again, Chopper 11 following the first group of students that are being taken to be reunited with their parents. You can see that they're receiving a police escort that looks to be Texas DPS at the front of that bus. So these kids are being looked after very well here. We know that this is going to become a really large crime scene for investigators to have to comb through now as they go about their business of documenting a crime scene, trying to figure out what happened. We're also working to get some conditions on these folks that were injured. And again, we know 4 people have been injured. And again, Madison, one of them, minor injuries, 3 of them taken to the hospital. Of the 3 that were taken to the hospital, we believe that at least 2 of them received gunshots.
Yeah, and that I think is a key takeaway, because at this point, likelihood likelihood of any other injuries being involved is not apparent, because we have heard that the all clear has been given at Mansfield Timberview High School, which means that there is no longer an active threat at that high school. Instead, there is just an ongoing search for the suspect that is considered armed and dangerous. But again, it's not a very far drive, Ken, from Timberview High School over towards the Mansfield Performing Arts Center. It's only about 5 miles. But again, this is going to cover the area where they're searching for the suspect that you see on your screen, which is Timothy George Simpkins, and likely driving a 2018 silver Dodge Charger. But police saying, again, they have a high confidence that this was the shooter and that there was only one shooter involved in this incident.
We learned during that news conference that took place a couple of minutes ago that this happened on the second floor of the school, and it happened inside of a classroom. There were other students present, other people inside of the room. We know that there was a fight, a physical fight, a fist fight between two young men here, and at some point the gun was produced, and several shots were fired, and that's when the injuries took place, and that happened sometime around 9:15 in the morning. We got some clarification. We heard about it about 9:36. We heard about it here, but about 9:15 is when all of this would have happened. And officials said that there were 2 Mansfield ISD police officers that were assigned to the school. They were inside the school when all of this happened, and almost immediately responded to the situation.
And Ken, obviously this breaking news is just keeping our attention right now, but we do want to let viewers know, if you are looking for The Young and the Restless, which is usually airing at this time on our station, you can head to TXA 21 to be able to watch that. But likelihood is that the entire community is gripped by this information as it comes out, because it's been a slow process to get the information and to get little details confirmed. But Ken, overall, it's been a very fast process as far as the people that are truly involved in this, as far as the students being cleared from the scene, as far as police arriving, doing their meticulous search. That has been very fast. It's just been a little bit slow getting that information to us.
And certainly hats off to the folks who are there on the ground making this process happen sort of seamlessly, because they have prepared for it. I mean, we heard officials talk about it. You know, these children are in the hands of professionals right now, and the folks who have planned and sort of prepared for this sort of unfortunate tragedy to happen, and this plan is being executed right now just the way that they had planned it. Again, those kids being moved over to that reunification center. We heard from parents earlier in the day, even from the scene, parents who had gathered there, you know, the first group that gathered there to the scene, talking about sort of the panic and that overwhelming fear that they had because they weren't getting any information, they weren't getting any questions answered. Obviously, that's every parent's worst nightmare, to hear that something might have happened to their kids inside of schools. But there wasn't really a lot of information to share in those real early moments, because police were trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, exactly.
And the kids' cell phones signals, they were blocked inside the school. That wasn't lifted until a little bit later on in the morning, and that's when the parents began hearing firsthand accounts from their kids of what took place.
Yeah, Ken, right now we're looking at a kind of a split screen. We've got the school buses making their way to the Performing Arts Center, and then on your left you're seeing the view of the Mansfield Performing Arts Center, where all of those parents you can see gathered underneath that awning have gone to be reunited, and it looks like there are dozens of parents anxiously awaiting the reunification with their child.
That's certainly going to be the place where the rest of the story is going to carry out for the evening, at least in the next sort of couple of hours, because the students will start arriving bus by bus as they're taken out of the school, evacuated safely, loaded onto those buses, and taken over to the reunification center. But you're right, we see first responders there. We see a police presence there as well. I think there looks like a police officer there trying to set up some chairs for some of the parents, because we can only imagine that the crowds there are going to start to kind of sort of grow here within the next few minutes, as this is the place, the only place where parents are being urged to go reunite with their kids. All of the kids are going to end up here at some point.
Exactly, and that address is 1110 Debbie Lane, and that is, again, the Mansfield ISD Performing Arts Center. It looks like right now, Ken, that those school buses are on Debbie Lane. They're approaching that area, so they should be arriving on scene here in the next few moments. In fact, look at that. Look at the cars that are parked on the side of the road, waiting to get just to the parking lot of the Mansfield Performing Arts Center. So again, we've got I mean, we know the attendance at this school, the enrollment at this school was 2,000. That is a lot of students. That's a lot of parents, a lot of vehicles. The Mansfield Performing Arts Center is likely only accustomed to being having one school present, maybe one choir present at a time. So the parking situation is going to be difficult. So please be patient with local authorities as they try to get students reunited with their families. But be assured that they are doing this with the utmost attention to detail, because as you've been mentioning, Ken, they're going to be taking photos of student IDs, making sure that every single student is safe and accounted for.
In this part of the process, just judging by what we have seen unfold this morning and sort of the speed at which everything has unfolded and how quickly we've gotten into different phases of this event and of this investigation, they're moving pretty quickly, the authorities. And again, this is something that they say they've prepared for. And we saw when those buses began to arrive there at the school, I mean, it was dozens of buses, it looked like, wrapped all around the service road in front, kind of made a U-turn and wrapped on the other side of the service road as well. So again, those are all signals and indications that they are implementing this plan. Unfortunately, that they've had to do it because tragedy has struck here at home in their school, but this is a plan that they are familiar with, and it seems like everything is going accordingly.
Yeah, and we even heard that from police that were on scene at that press conference. The first thing out of their mouth was, this is a multi-agency response, and we have been doing everything in our power to create a unified effort to first stop the threat, and secondly, make sure that the attention of detail is there in order to make sure that the scene is investigated and that the perpetrator, therefore the suspect that's still at large, is brought to justice. So obviously their first priority when they arrived on scene this morning was making sure that they stopped the threat, but then now their attention turns to finding that suspect.
We should let folks know that we're also monitoring all of social media right now, different threads with different information, different pictures, different images. We're only going to share with you things that we can confirm, okay? And that's important to point out because there's a lot being said about different details of how this happened, of why this happened, and different images. We're not going to try and add any sort of added stress or concern more than you're already having to deal with for families who are directly involved with all of this. We're going to let you know what we're hearing as soon as we hear it directly from authorities. And I say that because we have seen some of these videos that folks are talking about online. We have seen some of the details that folks are offering, but until we get that confirmed, you know, we're not going to pass that along as fact right now. So I just wanted to make a point.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. They also made a point to say during that press conference that if your student has any evidence.
And you've been watching CBSN Dallas coverage of a school shooting at Timberview High School in Arlington, Texas. Officials say at least 4 people have been injured, including some students, and the shooter is still at large. We will continue our coverage of the shooting just after the break, so stay with us. You're streaming CBSN.
An original documentary on CBSN.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future.
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An originals documentary on CBSN. Stream now. An original documentary on CBSN.
50 shows running, the lights blinking.
People fight their entire career to get to Broadway.
You've trained your entire life.
Spotlights, drama, passion.
This is what we live for.
Until COVID turned off the lights.
It's like going from a bright light to pitch black.
Scenes from Broadway's unique struggle with COVID.
It was devastating.
Broadway contributes about $15 billion to New York City's economy and 100,000 jobs.
The sound team, the lighting team, everyone.
The world does not realize how big this is.
This is how we make money.
This is a specialized industry. You don't tell a doctor to go get a serving job. Like, why are we different?
Are we going to be able to pay our rent? Am I going to have food?
What will happen in Broadway's new opening act?
We're in uncharted waters again.
The show must go on.
There is reason to hope again. I think people are going to be crying. I know I will.
An originals documentary on CBSN. Stream now.
Everything was on fire.
You're left making decisions you don't want to make.
If we're at war or fire, we're going to spend a lot of money, we're going to take a lot of casualties, and we're going to lose.
We got to do something about it.
If it's important to our nation,
The country is facing yet another unprecedented crisis.
it's on Face the Nation.
You heard the president. Where do you think this stalemate goes from here?
Making politics make sense.
What do you think happened here?
The why behind the biggest stories. Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan on CBS.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. We are following breaking news out of Texas, where police are responding to a school shooting. It happened at Timberview High School in Arlington. That is just outside of Dallas. Police say 4 people have been hurt, 3 students and 1 adult. They say there's no longer an active threat at the school. Officers are, however, looking for a person of interest who they believe is the gunman, 18-year-old Timothy George Simpkins. Police say the shooting started with an argument between students when shots were fired. Officers do not believe this was a planned attack. I'd like to bring in CBS News security and law enforcement analyst James Galliano now. James, thank you so much for joining us. Because police have a person of interest they are now looking for, how will this affect how the investigation is handled?
Well, what makes it more difficult, Tanya, is that it's not a static crisis site anymore. So we now know that we have a manhunt underway. However, for all the parents of those 19,000 students, obviously there is a sigh of relief there that there's no longer an active shooting scene. And look, they don't normally get out in front and put a press conference on this early in an investigation. I think they needed to get that information out there. They had to get the subject or the person of interest, face out there, description of the vehicle, and now police have got to shut it down. They've got to figure out a way to interdict this person, and obviously with public help, that's what we're looking for. And then the second phase is now to go back into the school. And I got to tell you, Tanya, huge space, 75 acres, I think 19,000 students, somewhere around 400,000 plus square feet of learning space. That's going to be a very difficult scene to prosecute.
Sure, and tell us a little bit more about the evacuation process, because, of course, many students at this school, and I understand from listening to the press conference not that long ago that some of the students are still being held either for questioning because perhaps they witnessed something that might be helpful. So how is the evacuation process going to move forward from here? How is communication with the parents going to take place? Because, of course, parents must just be desperate to hear from their kids.
Yeah, great question. So what we've learned since Columbine, and obviously that was the shooting that changed epically, seismically shifted how law enforcement responds. We no longer wait for a homogenous unit to respond. If there is a shooting at a school, an active shooter is declared, whatever units show up on scene are to go to the sound of the guns. Now, what we instruct people there, students in this instance, is these 4 things: run, hide, fight, tell. So that's the order. If you can run, do that. If you can't run, hide, but find something that provides you some solid cover. And if you must, then fight. And the last thing is make certain to tell law enforcement what you've seen once you're outside of what we're calling a crisis site here. So law enforcement right now is dealing with kids that have been streaming out on their own. They're also bringing kids out slowly that were probably hunkered down underneath desks or hiding in closets. It's going to take a long time to completely clear the building. The good news is that the police are pretty confident in this one that it was only one shooter, and that one shooter is no longer inside the building. Parents will have to go to what we call a reunification center. That's a location away from the school where then they can find out where their students are, where their children are, and they can be reunited there.
Right. So to your point that everything changed after Columbine from a law enforcement response perspective, it appeared the police certainly had a plan in place for the search and evacuation of the school that they implemented almost immediately. You know, we heard from our local affiliate that the police are checking and photographing each student's ID card as they are identified and evacuated. You know, is this all an example of the ways that law enforcement's response to sad events like this, a school shooting, have sort of changed, and that now there is sort of a process in place for something as awful as this?
Yes, there is a process in place, and it is constantly being changed. Look, we learned horrific lessons at Columbine, where I think law enforcement waited almost 50 minutes to enter the building. We still learned horrible lessons after Parkland, the shooting in Florida in 2018. And those lessons that we learned from there, we're now implementing going forward. Especially with a school this large, my understanding in talking to some law enforcement sources is that there were 2 SROs, or school resource officers, armed officers on the campus. But again, when you've got that much space, 75 acres, multitude of buildings, it's very difficult. And what happens in what we call in law enforcement the fog of war is, initially the reports are confusing. Somebody says it was a firecracker, somebody says it's in this building, somebody says another building. Law enforcement have to sift through that and sort through that, and sometimes that information vacuum early on makes it very difficult, and that's why initial reports, Tanya, are typically inaccurate and flawed.
So interesting. And James, you know, I'm curious about the gun. How was this student or any student able to get a gun onto campus? You know, do these large schools not have metal detectors in place?
So obviously education is run by the states, and every different municipality and their school systems have different rules. Generally speaking, in my understanding and having been in this business a long time, most schools, especially large schools like this, would have some type of metal detector or some type of security screening before the children come in. I listened very closely to the press conference, and the law enforcement officer that was briefing said he was unsure if there were magnetometers or any screening at any of the entry points. The problem is, because you've got fire codes that say you've got to have multiple exits and entry places, single point entry and screening is very difficult to do. I'm not suggesting we don't do it, but are there ways to get a gun inside and to hide it, secrete it, sneak it in? Unfortunately, and in this instance, the way it looks or appears, yes.
Right. And of course, there's always the question, is something lost when you make a school too much like a prison, right? When it feels like constant lockdown coming in and out of the building, that element of it has to be addressed as well, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's that old argument, that continuum that we're on. If you want to make us entirely safe and have 100% security, then you're going to have to let somebody impose martial law. No one wants that. We've got to find that sweet spot where we protect people's privacy, we protect their Fourth Amendment rights against illegal searches and seizures, but at the same token, if we can't send our kids to school and know that they're going to come home in one piece, that's a sobering thought too. We've got to find that sweet spot, and I think this country, 200 and almost 50 years later, we're still trying to feel our way through it and figure out what the best path forward is.
We are still searching for it. James Galliano, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your expertise.
Thanks, Tanya.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is hearing comments today on the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. This bill was created in response to a wave of restrictive voting legislation passed by several states this year. It aims to fully restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by bringing back protections lost as a result of 2 Supreme Court decisions. Those provisions allow voters to sue to block discriminatory voting laws and the pre-clearance formula. The House passed its version of the bill in August, but Democrats have had trouble pushing legislation through the closely divided Senate. With more on this, I'd like to bring in CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright. Antoine, welcome. Great to see you. So, a version of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act was introduced to the Senate yesterday. So why is the Senate Judiciary Committee holding this hearing today?
Well, I think because voting rights, as I've said to you before, Tanya, is perhaps the most consequential issue of our day. And voting rights, in my view, is much like oxygen to the body. It's much like basic infrastructure to any community. Without voting rights, we have absolutely nothing. And so there's this fierce urgency of now out there to get something meaningful done. 500 pieces of legislation across the country in almost 50 states have been passed to suffocate or further suppress the votes. What the Senate is attempting to do as a follow-up to what the House has done is find a way federally to implement changes so these restrictive voting pieces of legislation filed in states cannot be in place by the time we get to the oh so consequential 2022 midterms.
All right, Antoine, we're going to have to come back to you in a little bit. We're taking you now to the White House where President Biden is speaking. Let's listen.
Each time the Democrats supported the effort to raise the debt. But now Republicans won't raise the debt limit despite being responsible for what the debt limit, why it has to be raised for the bills that are outstanding. They won't raise it enough through, if they've done, we're going to be defaulting on a debt that would lead to self-inflicted wounds that risk the market tanking